A young man stands alone in the middle of a burning street. His shirt is torn, his fists are bleeding, and blue light is pouring off his skin like heat off asphalt. In front of him is an entire line of armored special forces soldiers, rifles up, and behind them tanks. He is smiling. "Do you guys know this?" he says, wiping blood from his mouth. "My current rank within the special forces is..." A soldier screams at him to shut up, calls him a mutant, and opens fire. So he moves. One blast of blue energy tears the front rank apart and throws bodies through the smoke. He leaps into the middle of them with a heavy blade and cuts a path clean through, taking hits, bleeding, and not slowing down for a single one of them. A woman with pink hair throws up a wall of telekinesis just in time to stop his next strike. She is shaking. She screams at the rest of her people to keep firing, and when she finally gets a close look at his glowing blue eye and the scar running through it, the order dies in her throat. "Who the hell are you?" And the young man, calm in the eye of all that fire, thinks to himself that he never did introduce himself, that there is a word for what he is, a classification, something beyond the usual standards. They call it NS, and right there, before he can say it out loud, the story cuts away from him. Because to understand how this kid ends up standing over a broken special forces unit, glowing like a bomb about to go off, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. Welcome to Genius of the Unique Lineage, also released as the perfect hybrid, and in this video we are covering the entire first season from start to finish. His name is Gwang-ik, and the reason the woman with the pink hair is so afraid of him is that he is something the world was never supposed to produce. Here is what you need to know about his world. A while back, jets called Earth Blackholes tore open everywhere at once. In the sky, in the ocean, in the middle of the ground. Things that were not human came out of them and started killing people by the thousands. And in the middle of all that dying, ordinary humans started waking up with power. Some became immortals who could take a fatal wound and simply not die. Some became shapeshifters who could turn their bodies into beasts and carried around 3 times a normal person's strength. Some became mages. Together the world called them metahumans, and they were the ones who fought the invaders back and closed the gates. People still call that stretch of years the terrible year. When it was over, everyone was too afraid of these powered people to just let them walk around, so they got sorted. The immortals were folded into the government, into a body called the Old Force. The shapeshifters got tied to a giant global company called Excurasi. The mages went underground and hid themselves with magic. And 20 years after the terrible year, life mostly went back to normal. Which brings us to a very ordinary afternoon in a supermarket where a father is buying spring onions with his teenage son. The father leans in close, lowers his voice, and tells the boy something enormous. He is an immortal. He has been one this whole time. And then, in the same breath, he tells his son not to breathe a word of it to his mother, because if she found out he had been hiding it, it might just end the marriage. The boy takes this in without flinching, and there is a good reason for that. What his father does not know is that his son is already keeping a second secret, one that runs in the exact opposite direction. Because 2 years earlier his mother pulled him aside, cheerfully turned part of her body into something inhuman as a joke, and told him that she is a shapeshifter. And that he must never, ever tell his father. So this is the family at the center of everything. A father who is secretly an immortal, a mother who is secretly a shapeshifter, each one hiding their true nature from the person they married. And one teenage boy sitting quietly at the dinner table between them, the only person alive who knows both halves of the secret. His name is Gwang-ik, and his parents have no idea what they have actually made. That night his father mentions almost casually that Gwang-ik will probably awaken as an immortal himself around 11 o'clock. He describes his own awakening as nothing at all. A brief warmth, then a little cold and slightly sharper senses. Painless, easy. Gwang-ik goes to his room and waits, and quietly he is worried because he already awakened once as a shapeshifter. And no one ever told him a person could do both. 11 o'clock comes, and instead of a little warmth, it feels like his body is being torn apart from the inside. He doubles over, coughing up blood, alone on his bedroom floor, biting down so his parents will not hear. His father promised it would not hurt. His father has no idea what it is like to awaken as 2 things at once. And that is the whole engine of this story, so hold on to it. Gwang-ik is not an immortal, he is not a shapeshifter. He is both, stacked into one body, and nothing about him is going to follow the rules that everyone else's power follows. He hides the blood, he hides the pain, and by morning he has taught himself to clamp down on his new senses so hard that his parents never suspect a thing. The immortal father, the shapeshifter mother, both convinced their son is a perfectly normal kid who eats a little too much at breakfast. We even get a look at how the fighting works now and why it matters. After the old Force government formed, a new kind of Jate opened. Not a black hole this time, but an Earth white hole, the reverse of the old Jates, and this one let humans go the other way, sending teams into the Invaders world, a place people call the other side. It is full of metals and creatures Earth does not have anymore, which means it is worth a fortune, which means people now fight each other over who gets to go in. And the fighters they send are almost always shapeshifters for the raw strength and the endurance. His mother wants nothing to do with any of that. She does not want her son shipped off to the other side to fight as a shapeshifter, so she has spent years quietly training him at a gym, teaching him to control the instinct that comes with the strength, planning to slide him into a safe college track. His father would rather he take the civil service exam and ride the Immortal's government connections into a comfortable life. So the two of them sit their son down and finally ask him what he actually wants. And Gwang-ik tells them the truth. He wants to join UDT, the Special Warfare Unit, the most dangerous door in the building. His mother nearly comes out of her chair. His father, calmer, points out that not every soldier gets thrown into the meat grinder, that becoming an officer is a respectable path, and the fight cools into a compromise. But listen to what Gwang-ik admits to himself while they argue, because it tells you exactly who this kid is. He never actually wanted to be a soldier. He only picked it because his mother refused to let him fight on the other side, so a soldier was as close as he could get to the real goal. He is not chasing safety, and he is not chasing his parents' plans. He wants to throw himself at the most dangerous thing available, and he wants to be the best there has ever been at it. The boy who could coast through life on two kinds of power has decided quietly that he would rather earn everything the hard way. The compromise comes with a price. To pass the officer's exam, his parents arrange weekend tutoring with someone they know, an old contact who lives out in the countryside and flatly refuses to come into the city. So Gwang-ik takes a bus out to the middle of nowhere, a little annoyed at the distance, still telling himself that UDT is the only thing he really cares about. And when he arrives, he catches the tutor already on the phone, a rough-looking man in a bucket hat being asked to go easy on this kid because of who his parents are. The man says no, he says he does not care whose son this is, and he promises with a small and slightly frightening smile that he is going to educate him properly. Gwang-ik thinks he is here for exam prep. He is about to walk into something a lot worse than a study session. The tutor draws 2 words in the dirt and explains how an immortal actually gets stronger. Healing is not one thing, it is 2. There is base health, the raw speed of your regeneration, and there is sense, how sharply you feel pain and damage. You train both. And the way this man trains them is to point Gwang-ik at a 50-meter stretch of ground planted with upright blades, tell him to take his shoes off and make him run across it. Barefoot, his feet open up on the first steps and keep opening the whole way, and this is the moment the tutor stops pretending. There is no civil service exam. What he is really preparing Gwang-ik for is the qualification test for the Immortal Special Forces. What surprises the tutor is that Gwang-ik does not panic. Most people flood with fear the second the pain starts, and Gwang-ik just keeps his head. The reason is a strange one. Before he became an immortal, this body already belonged to a trained marksman, so it came preloaded with composure under stress. The tutor sets a challenge, 50 meters of blades in under 6 seconds, and Gwang-ik clears it, drenched in his own blood but inside the time. Then the tutor grins, says he forgot to start the clock, and makes him run the whole thing again. It is a lie, it is a prank, and it tells you what kind of teacher this is. The next drill is a collar. A remote-controlled collar that strangles him on command, so he learns to keep functioning while he is being choked out. The tutor snaps it on, says here we go, and triggers it. Gwang-ik hangs on right up to the edge of blacking out, and the strangling stops not because he tapped out but because the battery in the collar died. When the tutor checks the timer, his face changes completely. The requirement was 5 minutes. Gwang-ik lasted 12 minutes and 47 seconds, and the old man looks at him the way a child looks at a brand new toy. Then his mother enters the picture. She tells his father a lie, that Gwang-ik is off studying for college, and instead ships him to a second teacher for 2 nights of room, board, and something that is definitely not studying. This one runs a gym built into a converted underground parking garage, and she picks up where the forest tutor left off. If an immortal's training is a series of psychotic acts, a shapeshifter's training is a series of ignorant ones. She straps monitors to his wrist and ankle, watches him run, calls him lazy trash sitting on top of good hardware, and promises to rebuild him from the feet up. First she has him run without stopping for 14 hours straight. Then she raises it to 24 hours of running while memorizing a training video and absorbing her lectures at the same time, real multitasking, body and mind at full load together, and Gwang-ik finishes all of it. Everything in this stretch is Gwang-ik quietly breaking the rules of his own training. When she teaches flexibility, she warns him it has to be done slowly, gradually, even for an immortal. He ignores her. He forces his body straight past its limit, deliberately tearing the muscle, and lets his regeneration knit it back together in seconds so he hits full flexibility instantly instead of over weeks. She is horrified and then she is impressed, and that reaction is going to become a pattern. He carries a 60-kilogram barbell while he runs because a shapeshifter's strength runs about 3 times a normal man's. He walks a steel wire strung across a stairwell drop and never once loses his footing, because after running on knives, falling onto a safety mat does not frighten him at all. Then the forest tutor takes him back and the training turns from survival into fighting. He learns that an immortal heals a bullet wound like it is nothing, but a blade or an amputation costs real time to grow back, so in a fight your arm is your shield, you feed a limb to an attack rather than let it reach your head. He learns to hide the energy coming off his body so sensitive enemies cannot track him. He gets his organ regeneration tested the hard way, a knife into the stomach with no warning, the wound sealing almost before the blood finishes falling. The second teacher runs him through a basement full of specialized gunfire, drilling him to zigzag, use cover, and read where the shooter is aiming. And somewhere in the middle of all this, Gwang-ik works out the thing his teachers have not said out loud. His father's immortal style only teaches him how to endure. His mother's shapeshifter style only teaches him how to dodge. Neither one on its own teaches him how to actually win a fight. He's going to have to build that part himself from both halves at once. Which is exactly the point when a fanged, burning thing comes flying at him out of nowhere during a routine wire run. Using the energy sense he just learned, he feels it coming and slips it on pure instinct, and his teacher stares at him and asks, almost in disbelief, "You sense that? That ambush has a name, the Wild Bloodthirst, and clearing it is the door into the real shapeshifter hell training." Gwang-ik keeps grinding, blades and traps and poison on one side, weights and bullets and wire on the other, 2 brutal disciplines folding into one body. And while he does, this chapter finally shows you where all of it comes from. 9 years ago, a dimensional gate called Hughes tore open. During the invasion, a building came down on top of a much younger Gwang-ik, pinning him under the rubble, and from underneath all that concrete he watched a single hero stand alone against an endless tide of invaders and win. He decided, right there, buried and helpless, that he wanted to be that. His mother has spent every year since trying to steer him toward a quiet, normal life, never realizing that the quiet kid at her dinner table made up his mind under a collapsed building and never once changed it. The section ends on the reveal that reframes everything you have watched. One night both parents are out. His mother told his father she was visiting a friend, and instead she is standing near a convenience store meeting the forest tutor in secret because she has been too scared to ask the question out loud. She is terrified that her son, a half-blood, a mix of human and shapeshifter, only inherited a fraction of the real power, and that all this training is polishing a body that was never going to be enough. And the tutor tells her the truth. In the past, groups of what he calls mad scientists tried to crossbreed the special species on purpose, trying to build a superior hybrid they called an Irregular. Almost every time it failed and produced something weaker or something monstrous, but every so often it produced the real thing, and her son is the real thing, a genuine Irregular, stronger than a full-blood, already hiding his energy, already surviving a technique that should have flattened him. She threatens to bury the old man for 2 weeks if he is lying to her. Then it sinks in and the fear turns into pride and she smiles to herself. As expected of my son. On the morning of the exam, his mother cooks him a special breakfast and frets out loud that he is going to fail and let his father down, and there is a second worry underneath the first, the quiet fear every parent of a child like him carries. Gwang-ik just tells her he is confident because he is an immortal too, which is a genuinely strange thing to say about a civil service test, and she lets it slide with a joke that if he flunks they will settle it in a boxing ring. On his way out the door there is a small, silly detour, an old schoolmate who calls him Appa and turns him down flat when he clowns around, announcing she wants a smart, well-off boyfriend, right before some rough-looking men start hassling her on the street. It is the kind of ordinary world beat the story keeps threading through all the strangeness. a reminder that Gwang-ik still lives a fairly normal life on top of a very abnormal one. Then he takes a bus to a sleek modern office building, where a guard looks him over like he might be carrying something dangerous before waving him through, gets sent up to the 9th floor, and is walked down a dim, isolated corridor to a door that reads Special Testing Center, deliberately tucked away from the normal working floors. He sits down as applicant 48, keeping himself wound tight and ready for a trap, and the bald proctor at the front of the room suddenly locks eyes with him and asks out of absolutely nowhere, just what kind of bastard are you? Gwang-ik has no answer for him. He feels the wrongness in the room too, prickling at the back of his neck, and he cannot name it any better than the proctor can. When the papers come down, they are not a civil service exam at all. Every examinee in the hall is unusually good-looking, which is its own quiet tell, and a whispered warning circulates not to breathe a word of this test to anyone outside or post about it online. The papers are titled the Immortal Special Employment Test, and the questions are all about things that only a very specific kind of person would ever need to know. How you treat a wound on an immortal versus a normal human. How you actually survive a blade coming at you. And near the very end, one question simply asks flatly how to kill an immortal. Gwang-ik answers all of it easily off the back of his father's brutal survival training, while carefully filling in every personal and background question as a perfectly ordinary human, and he turns his sheet in early and face down. On his way out, the red-haired woman handling the agreement paperwork quietly asks if he is mixed blood, and he admits it, a mix of Shapeshifter and Immortal, and she wishes him luck with a small knowing smile. Behind the scenes, the bald proctor reads back through his answers and goes still because Gwang-ik did not write down ordinary wounds anywhere. He flagged suffocation, freezing, burning, and being crushed to pieces, the only 4 things that actually threaten a body that heals from everything else. That is not textbook knowledge. That is the danger sense of a person who has lain awake thinking very hard about all the ways he could still die. 15 days later, he does not just tell his mother that he passed. He tells her he scored first in the entire country, and the whole house erupts. His father comes home and plays it ice cold over a barbecue dinner, proud and pretending very hard not to be, and mentions there is still an interview stage to get through. And when Gwang-ik asks the obvious question, what does this organization actually want with a room full of immortals? What is the job even for? His father dodges every angle of it and waves him off with an airy I don't know anything. He knows exactly what it is. He simply will not say it out loud, and that refusal hangs over everything, a quiet reminder that the adults in Gwang-ik's life have been managing his future from the shadows since before he could walk. The interview is more of the same, only sharper. A panel that includes the red-haired woman and a red-haired man the recruit's nickname Candle throws blunt, ugly hypotheticals at him one after another. How much would he sacrifice for a teammate? If your mother and your partner were both drowning, who do you pull out first? 1 bullet, 2 targets, what do you do? Gwang-ik answers each one with a cold, practical calm that visibly unsettles the panel, working out how to save both, treating the gun itself as a throwable weapon to buy the extra second. A few days later the acceptance letter arrives, and the benefits are almost a joke. A starting salary north of 60 million won, training and culture and leisure costs all covered, company housing near the workplace once the trial period ends. Even an exemption from extended military service, the kind of package coworkers say could wreck the entire job market. The red-haired woman delivers the documents in person and lets slip, casually, that she already knows his father is the Immortal. And in that moment Gwang-ik understands that whatever this job really is, it is classified deep enough that he will never be able to tell his own mother the details of it. That night his mother sits him down for the serious talk, the one every child like him eventually gets. She reminds him that a shapeshifter's instincts get loud, that aggression and darker impulses ride the pull of the full moon, and that control is the only thing standing between him and disaster, that he needs outlets, exercise, the mountains, anything to keep the animal quiet. And here is the quiet mercy tucked inside all of his strangeness. Because he is mixed, because he is both things at once, he actually dodges the worst extremes of either side, and his instincts sit at the level of a fairly normal 20-year-old. His mother tells him plainly and gently that she is just glad he turned out the way he did, given how badly it so often goes for children born the way he was, crediting it to his smart father and his beautiful mother in the same breath. He boasts a little about one day running the whole ministry, and she teases him as all talk while beaming with pride. Then he packs a suitcase and heads off to a 5-week live-in orientation, brimming with the certainty that he will do fine wherever he lands and whoever he lands with. And on his way in, he catches sight of a couple of faces he does not know yet. A blonde girl with a braid, a young man with intense, restless eyes. He is about to spend the single most important month of his life with them. The bus ride to orientation is where Gwang-ik gets his first real taste of how the pure-blooded look at people like him. A blonde girl a few seats over spends the entire trip loudly insulting him to her father, calling him rude and beneath her, insisting that purity of blood is the only thing in this world that actually matters and that a mixed blood barely counts as one of them. Gwang-ik takes every word of it in complete silence. What he does not mention is the strange, gas-like presence that lives in his head and occasionally talks to him, which chooses this moment to politely ask whether it can go out into the world for a bit. He says sure, and whatever it does next leaves the blonde girl mortified and in tears in front of the entire bus, while Gwang-ik notes, a little embarrassed, that the revenge happened entirely against his will. He also meets a couple of the other new Immortal hires, a 21-year-old and an older recruit, the three of them awkwardly negotiating who has to use formal honorifics with whom. And then the bus pulls up to what is very obviously not a gentle corporate orientation. It is a training camp, 5 rows of recruits lined up in the dirt, and a bald drill instructor already mocking how weak every one of them is. The company running it is Hwarim Telecommunications, a government-backed outfit dressed up as a phone company, and its real purpose is teaching immortals how to actually control and use their power before the job gets them killed. The instructors make the stakes clear fast and ugly. Lee Jang-mo handles raw strength, and when a recruit yells out during a drill, Jang-mo breaks the kid's arm on the spot as a demonstration, then lays out the camp's rules where swearing costs points, yelling costs points, unauthorized fighting costs more, and every broken rule begins with a fractured bone. Park Daram handles technique. A third instructor, Kim Han, cheerfully announces he will kill them all and then turns out to be the one who teaches immortals how to manage and recover their bodies. A man called Candle handles close combat by tackling recruits flat to prove that an immortal body is nowhere near as invincible as they think. They line everyone up, bark at them to run, and single out the first 15 to cross the line. Gwang-ik, who has already run barefoot across a field of knives and walked a wire over a stairwell drop, could win this in his sleep. So he finishes 14th on purpose, playing the part of a solid but forgettable recruit because his mother drilled one rule into him since he was small. Never, ever let people find out what you really are. The thing that actually makes him famous is not his strength. It is sleep. Immortals, it turns out, suffer from brutal, grinding insomnia, sometimes for years after they awaken, and the entire camp is running on empty. And Gwang-ik can knock a person out cold with a single clean chop to the neck. So he starts going bunk to bunk at night, putting his exhausted roommates under one by one, insisting the whole time that it is not violence, it is a lullaby. Word spreads fast. Soon recruits from other groups are seeking him out, including a tattooed group leader who walks up and tells him he wants to dream too, which sounds like a pickup line and is actually a desperate plea for one real night of unconsciousness. Gwang-ik obliges every last one of them. He picks up a nickname, Neck Slice, which the camp promptly fuses onto his real name until he is simply Neck Gwang-ik, and somewhere inside all that shared misery, the recruits stop being wary strangers and start being a team. He even pulls a stranger through a run the man was about to quit, pacing his breathing so he does not get left behind, because that is just who he is when no one is grading him. There is a real education buried in the pain too. In the classroom they learn about the Invaders, the creatures that have been spilling out of the black holes for 20 years now, catalogued and ranked by threat level, and the very strongest of them given proper names. Unnamed, one example they are taught, the Blue Knight, has killed something like 500 named class fighters on its own, flies at highway speeds on metal wings, and is exactly the kind of monster this job exists to clean up after. Because that is what Hwarim really does. It mops up the invaders that slip out of the jates now that the world has more or less fought the crisis to a standstill. Gwang-ik is quietly relieved, because this is a well-paid job that keeps him well away from the frontline named hunting track his father might have pushed him toward. They also get their support gear explained, a self-injecting vein device and a battle drug the recruits immediately nickname their own little slice of heaven, a temporary strength boost that, they will learn later, comes with a real price attached. After a solid month of hell, the final rankings come down, and here Gwang-ik gets a genuine surprise. Nobody flunked out, so the entire class graduates as Hwarim employees. Third place goes to Kai Hyamin, who seems slow and dim but somehow keeps landing near the top of everything. Second goes to Jeong Kinam, a pureblood immortal from one of the country's top 3 bloodlines, razor-focused and visibly gutted to have missed first by a hair, carrying the weight of a family name on his back. In first place to Gwang-ik's honest shock does not go to him. It goes to Woo Miho, a coldly brilliant girl with no warmth in her at all, who openly gamed the entire point system by playing the instructors against each other. And the others mutter what a piece of work she is even as they clap for her. And here is the tell about who Gwang-ik really is. He fully expected to top the class, and losing it barely touches him because he reflects alone that he never actually wanted first place at all. Something else matters more to him, something he still is not saying out loud. The three top finishers each quietly seek him out to trade contact information, sensing correctly that the four of them are going to be tangled together for a long time. And the section ends on a small, cold warning about the world he has just signed himself into. The results gathering is winding down when a tall man walks into the room, except no one saw him walk in. He has hidden his energy so completely that 10 immortals standing in that room never felt him arrive, never sensed the door. He introduces himself pleasantly as Nam Myunjin, president of Hwarim Telecommunications, here in person to greet the new hires. A man who can drift past a room full of immortals like a ghost, running the company Gwang-ik has just handed his entire life over to. The president gives the new hires a short speech that doubles as a warning. Nam Myunjin is a first-generation immortal, born back in the 70s, a man who lived through the terrible year itself, spent 8 years on an emergency operations team when the Jates were at their worst, and now sits among the top 10 immortals in the entire Old Force Korean branch. He tells them flatly that the training was nothing compared to the actual job, and that working hard will not make them rich, it will keep them alive. Then the department assignments come down one by one. The star recruits get handshakes and photos with the president in the departments they chose. Gwang-ik gets assigned almost as an afterthought near the end to External Security Team 3. At the drinks afterward, the office gossip is already running, whispering that his placement was arranged behind the scenes, that this nobody mixed blood is somehow connected to the president's own son, and someone shows off an immortal mind cocktail so absurdly expensive it costs billions a can before chugging it and passing out cold on the spot. His first real day does not go well. He reports to Team 3 floor in Hwarim's towering headquarters and walks straight in on the team manager mid-phone call, furious, chewing out HR for sending him a green rookie instead of the experienced transfer he had specifically requested. A senior teammate grudgingly agrees to train him, drops the entire personnel register on his desk to memorize by tomorrow, chains him to his chair with bathroom and meal breaks the only exceptions, and briefs him on manning the security hotline where you log every call, transfer employees, and never, ever say the words Immortal or Black Hole or anything about company business on an open line. And then at a team dinner meant to welcome him, a coworker pulls him aside for the real orientation. Word is already going around that he got screamed at on day one. There's a rumor his placement was engineered by the president's son. And then the coworker drops the part that actually matters, that External Security Team 3 sitting under dispatch headquarters is staffed by the elite of the elite, and its reputation is not that it bullies its rookies. Its reputation is that it kills them. On his very first day, all Gwang-ik can manage to say back is, "What, so meet the team he has been handed to." Lee Jungbong, the team manager, an immortal who is genuinely S-class on paper and even more dangerous in an actual fight, the single strongest combatant in all of Hwarim, a man the whole office calls the Blender. Lee Dong-hoon, the assistant manager, hopeless in a fight but a mental work genius who runs the entire team's coordination like a human control tower, quietly shouldering other teams' paperwork just to keep his own afloat. And Kim Jeong-ah, a genuinely rare thing in a building full of special species, an ordinary human with no special blood at all, former special forces, sitting right at the absolute ceiling of what a normal human body can do. And cold as a shut door. The office jokes that between the Blender, the knife, the panda, and the new kid they have taken to calling the CEO's Avenger, Team 3 is basically its own little band of misfits. A week in, they take Gwang-ik down to a gravity control chamber, technology reverse-engineered from beyond the dimensional Jates, to find out what he is really made of. The company record in this room is 9G. Gwang-ik breezes through the standard drills at 4G, then 5, a level his coworkers say even their strongest member could barely stand upright at, and he does not so much as look strained. Watching him from the side, Jungbong runs a grim private calculation. It is kinder, he reasons, to make a weak recruit quit early than to let him break in the field. Because immortals have a rare disorder lying in wait for the ones who push too far, a condition where a person loses all bodily sensation and can only feel alive again by inflicting pain on other people. Every bit as dangerous as a shapeshifter who has surrendered completely to the animal. Unconvinced and now genuinely curious, Jungbong keeps cranking the dial well past every normal limit. 7G, 8. And then a number the room has never once seen, 10G, and Gwang-ik's movement and his speed do not change at all, his eyes flickering a faint, telltale blue. The team manager just stands there, arms crossed, staring hard at this supposed nobody and murmurs is that perhaps what follows is a punishing stretch of desk work disguised as training. A tower of manuals lands on Gwang-ik's desk with 4 days to memorize all of it, a quiz at the end, and 1 extra hour of training for every wrong answer because going into the field without knowing your gear and your enemy, he is lectured, is going to war unarmed. He grinds through the entire thing at inhuman speed, flipping pages in a blur, and when they finally quiz him he answers with an accuracy that stops the room cold, coworkers wondering aloud whether he is some rare natural talent born with impossible potential. Impressed despite himself, Junbong decides to take the promising kid under his own wing, the blender rolling up his sleeves to get to work. And with nothing left to memorize, Gwang-ik starts studying the shape of the company itself, its 4 headquarters and the specific jobs his own team is supposed to do, mostly propping up other teams, wondering quietly why Team 3 seems to sit idle so much of the time. Which is when Junbong and a blonde colleague corner him with a bizarre interrogation about whether he used to be a school bully. Gwang-ik explains that he actually stopped the bullying at his school just by telling the other kids to knock it off, which the two of them immediately take to mean that he was the terrifying one everyone was afraid of. Junbong grabs him by the collar, asks if he is any good in a fight and challenges him on the spot. Gwang-ik just shrugs and says, "All right." The team manager schedules the match for 3 in the afternoon at the training center and invites the whole office to come watch, and he tells Gwang-ik to eat light beforehand so he does not throw up in the ring. He assigns the blonde coworker Miho as Gwang-ik's second, waving off her objection by reminding her that he has a say in her performance evaluation. Minutes before the bell, Miho asks him why he even agreed to this, whether he is upset about being strong-armed into it, and he tells her honestly that he is not. Everyone else warns him of the same single thing. This man is genuinely top tier, the real thing, do not try anything clever, just endure it and survive. So Gwang-ik opens the fight politely, announces he will go easy at first, throws a clean jab and then a combination and lands absolutely nothing, the manager slipping every punch like water and asking, almost bored, whether the rookie can even scratch him. And then they swing at the exact same instant. The manager's block rattles Gwang-ik's arm numb and shakes his skull, and that specific feeling drags him straight down into a memory. Because his mother started all of this a long time ago. When he was 15, instead of sending him to school, Kang Seul-hee dragged him to a boxing gym for secret combat training, and the first time she put him in the ring with a grown trainer, he got thoroughly, humiliatingly taken apart. But in the rematch, young Gwang-ik broke the man's arm and dropped him with a single clean elbow, shocking everyone watching, and the lesson he walked away with was not that he was strong. It was that he had walked in arrogant, assuming an easy win against someone with real training and had nearly paid for it. Standing across the ring from the team manager now, feeling that same numb jolt run up his arm, he realizes with a start that he has made the exact same mistake all over again. So he stops playing. He drops the going easy act entirely, settles his weight into a real stance and calls for a genuine second round. The manager fights dirtier now, taunting him mid-exchange, asking if he heard the girls cheering for him, telling him he should have become a celebrity instead, working every angle to crack his focus. Gwang-ik tries to steady his breathing and read the man's movement in advance, and gets caught anyway when the manager abruptly erases his own energy signature and hits him from a completely blind angle, sneering the word amateur. And here Gwang-ik has an honest argument with himself in the middle of a fistfight. Why is he even doing this? For the money. For some idea of heroism he is a little embarrassed to name out loud. He is unsettled that this man is genuinely faster than him despite all of his own shapeshifter-enhanced physicality, and he knows exactly why, that both of his tutors told him he had only just finished the basics, that there was never time to teach him more. While the man across from him is a pureblood who is trained since birth. The manager is legitimately, honestly better. Gwang-ik refuses to lose anyway. He shuts the taunting down, opens up with a real flurry, and finally says the thing that actually drives him, that he fights to do what he wants and to become who he wants to be. He lands a shot that draws blood. Asked between blows why he is still standing, he answers simply, "My sense of duty." And then he ends it, one decisive strike with a single cold thought behind it, break him, and he does. He wins outright, snapping the team manager's arm and cracking his ribs, and the whole room goes dead quiet at how brutally one-sided the finish turned out to be. Turns out the whole vicious duel was a tradition, a ritual the unit calls newbie killing, meant to humble the new blood, and the beaten manager gets carted off to the nurse. But privately he is grinning through the pain because he had to use 3 of his real ischias against this so-called mixed blood, more than he has needed against any other rookie he can remember, more than the last recruit who could not even land a hit on him. He can see exactly what Gwang-ik has in him now, the raw will and the fighting spirit and the sheer ceiling of it. A coworker sums the entire thing up by holding up a handwritten sign that reads, "Kind, normal people should not act like you, Gwang-ik, at work." Overnight, he is the undisputed standout of his class. The best part comes after. On a later training day, his temper finally cooled. The manager quietly offers Gwang-ik a peace deal with no strings that he will transfer him off the team whenever he wants, no matter what the higher-ups ordered, no hard feelings on either side. And instead of a punishment, he hands him homework. Figure out entirely on your own with no help from either of your tutors, exactly how you read and slip my hidden energy attack and write it up. Then he accidentally sees the answer without meaning to. The lecture that day is about company history, about an analysis team that hunts dangerous monsters and investigates the unexplained, which grew out of a failed program called the Oracle Project, an old attempt to build a system that could reliably predict the future. And the project fell apart for a genuinely fascinating reason. People who can truly glimpse the future do exist, but every prediction instantly splinters into countless possible futures, and worse, the human brain distorts what it sees, so an oracle's own certainty about tomorrow is very often just confident nonsense. Prediction only ever holds when almost no one knows it and no one ever says it out loud. In turning all of that over, Gwang-ik cracks his own homework. The manager's trick is built entirely on an immortal's unique senses, the ability to hide and falsify your own traces and quietly scramble an opponent's perception so cleanly that the target never once notices he has been deceived. And since Gwang-ik is part immortal himself, he could run the whole thing in reverse. Pair those same heightened senses with intuition, the instinct treating that normally only veterans of 100 real fights ever develop, and he could feel an attack coming before it ever lands. He replays the duel in his head and finds the proof already sitting there, the exact moment he shut out every scrap of surrounding noise and correctly read, in advance, that the next blow would come from the left. It works. This is the seed of the ability that is going to define the rest of his career. And how does he choose to turn in the report on this profound personal breakthrough? His coworkers find him standing in the middle of a completely trashed workroom, papers and equipment thrown everywhere, and when they ask what in the world he thinks he is doing, he just gestures at the wreckage around him and calls it the report. The more accurate answer, he says. The office is still buzzing about the improvised move Gwang-ik pulled in the duel, coworkers calling it flat-out impressive, when a superior hands him his first real field assignment. The team is short-staffed, so he gets paired with a nervous red-haired rookie for a low-rank job, the two of them kitting up in riot gear down on the armory floor and driving out to the zone. And on the way, the alarm sounds. A black hole is opening. Seeing that Jate split the air open does something to Gwang-ik that it does not do to the rookie beside him. It drops him straight down into the memory that made him, back to the incident that first tied his life to Kim Jeong-ah's. In the flashback, a younger, greener Gwang-ik answers a black hole alert alongside his Sunbi. The book says wait for backup, and backup is 15 minutes out, but there are civilians close enough to die in that window, so the two of them go in without hesitating. An invader called a blind dog comes tearing out of the opening, and his Sunbi kills it in a single bare-handed strike. No weapon, no wind-up, just gone, and the rookie version of him is floored by how strong she is. Walking it off afterward, she tells him the plain, ugly arithmetic of this industry, that no company is ever going to weigh a handful of immortal lives against dozens of ordinary human ones, that the math is never in their favor. He pushes back, half joking that he took this job precisely because he hates things that are supposed to be obvious. And then, because he is exactly the kind of person he is, he asks her if he is allowed to fall in love with her. Then the situation turns. They brought only 2 handguns between them because the Jate was predicted to release about 10 invaders, a small, manageable number. Instead, the black hole flexes and shifts into a full waveform, and a waveform does not mean 10. It means hundreds, an unbroken tide of blind dogs about to pour out onto 2 rookies holding 2 pistols and no plan. They open fire anyway, and the panels show it, the last rounds cracking off as the horde only swells thicker, muzzle flashes and shell casings and monsters dropping and being replaced by 3 more. The ammo bleeds away to nothing. His Sunbi makes the hard call and tells him to split off and hold the opposite flank, and even here, even now, she cannot help the dig, telling him she will kill them all while he gets himself chewed to pieces. And fighting beside her, feeling the shape of her power up close, Gwang-ik realizes something he was not supposed to know. She is shifting at full capacity. She is both an immortal and a shapeshifter, the same impossible mix he is. The bullets run out. The horde does not. And that is the moment young Gwang-ik makes the decision that defines the rest of his life. He asks himself a single quiet question: as an irregular, shall I do my duty? And then he stops hiding. For the first time in a real fight in front of witnesses, he lets go of the careful, dampened, 14th place version of himself and cuts loose. He wades into the wave barehanded and starts tearing it apart, blue light bleeding off his knuckles, taking wounds and shrugging them off, swearing under his breath that not a single one of these things gets past him to the people behind him. Somewhere in the chaos, a voice screams his name, and Command and his Sunbi both watch open-mouthed. As a rookie, no one had ever heard of Guts, an entire invasion by himself. And then the panel just goes quiet. 200 blind dog corpses carpet the ground, wall to wall, silence settling over a field that a minute ago was a slaughterhouse, and he turns to her, breathing hard, and confirms it in 3 words. He got all of them. The aftermath is where the trouble starts and where the bond is sealed. The higher-ups drag Kim Jeong-ah in and grill her, flatly refusing to believe that 2 rookies, one of them a plain human and the other a green immortal, did the work it would normally take 10 seasoned fighters to do. She covers for him at first, but pressed hard enough, backed into a corner, she gives them the truth that he did it entirely alone, and just like that, the real scale of his hidden power is out where important people can see it. And yet the piece of that day Gwang-ik actually carries with him is not the fear on their faces or the 200 bodies. It is what she said to him when it was over. She looked at the shaking kid. He still was underneath all that power, and she told him, "You did well. Really well." That was the exact moment he finally felt certain all the way down that the thing they had just done was right. That going in without waiting for strangers against the odds was worth it. Which is precisely why the present-day scene lands like a punch. Back at his desk, Gwang-ik surfaces from the memory to find that a disciplinary committee has been convened, and the person on trial is Kim Jeong-ah. Her crime is that she ignored her team manager's order to retreat during a dispatch mission the day before. She sits there and calmly confirms it. Yes, she disobeyed, and the committee treats it as the kind of violation you can lose your job over, with resignation floated openly as the penalty. They call Gwang-ik in to testify, and he refuses to hand them what they want. He denies that she forced him into anything, and he defends the call flat out: "We could have saved people." When a committee member sneers and waves the point away, something in him snaps, and he turns the anger on his own team manager, Lee Jungbong, until both of them get ordered to stand down and leave the room. Out in the hall, the office is already whispering about whether defending his teammate just torched his own performance review. Then someone pulls him aside, tells him the manager had been pushing things unusually hard, asks if anything else happened out there, and then, out of nowhere, asks whether he would like to join the inspection team. Gwang-ik says no, just no, and he is left standing there staring at nothing, genuinely unsure whether he did anything wrong at all, bracing himself for yet another apology letter he does not believe he owes. By now the morning duels with the team manager have become a fixture of office life. Gwang-ik wins his bouts in a little over 6 minutes while co-workers stand around placing casual bets on the clock. And his Sunbi Kim Jeong-ah quietly coaches him between rounds, telling him there is no clean pattern to Lee Jungbong's attacks he can memorize, that in the end he will only ever have his senses to rely on. His isque has grown obvious enough that another department comes sniffing around. An assistant manager named Sim Muyong floats the idea of transferring him over to the inspection team, then plays it off as a joke, and when Jungbong catches wind of the poaching attempt, he absolutely loses it, furious that anyone would dare try to steal his rookie. It takes a well-regarded 30-year-old immortal nicknamed Royal Road, Park Pilo, stepping in to cool the room down, though it is noted dryly that for all his reputation, Park Pilo would not last a minute against Jungbong in a real fight. Jungbong turns to Gwang-ik and asks him straight out whether he wants the transfer, and Gwang-ik turns it down and says he is staying with Team 3, which pleases the manager to no end. A man the narration keeps calling a blender, harsh on the surface and just as harsh all the way through. And then 2 minutes later, Jungbong discovers Gwang-ik's apology letter is still unfinished and threatens him all over again, and the office sighs that Team 3 now officially has 2 psychos on it. Then a real job comes down the wire. Because Kim Jeong-ah cannot take the assignment, Gwang-ik gets pulled off desk duty and sent to the airport to work as a human detector device. The mission is to capture a special shapeshifter suspect, who has stolen confidential company documents and almost certainly changed her face by now, and a sniffer out of a crowd, Excurasi loans over one of their own shapeshifter operatives to track by scent. Junbong assigns Gwang-ik to babysit the rookie Kinam, who has been on the team all of 3 weeks, worried the kid is far too green to be anywhere near an armed, unpredictable target. At the briefing, an assistant manager named Lee Jihai takes over as the operations leader and lays it all out. A plainclothes team spread across the terminal, a command room listening in on comms, a joint effort with an allied unit called Pwat. Gwang-ik and Miho will watch Gate 5 while Kinam covers a travel booth, and Lee Jihai and the Pwat leader run the listening room. The lone shapeshifters, from an Excurasi subsidiary called Real Guard, show up late and grumbling, one of them a big man named Kang, and Gwang-ik clocks him instantly, feeling the unnaturally solid muscle packed under the man's clothes. Off to the side, the Real Guard pair mutter resentfully about being lent out to run a joint job with Immortals, and wonder aloud why so few of their people were sent, as if someone wanted this operation thin. And the two of them part ways until the op goes live. The stakeout itself starts slow. Disguises and small talk and unconfirmed sightings crackling over the comms, a random stranger trying and failing to hit on one of them, Gwang-ik in a cap and sunglasses privately wondering why the rookie Kinam is getting such special treatment when he cannot sense a single thing in the kid that would justify it. He thinks about something his father once told him, that people born with truly sharp senses tend to have terrible personalities, and that his father had seemed almost relieved and a little disappointed that his son had not turned out to be fully one of those. He reminds himself that even as a mixed blood, he still has the raw processing speed that purebloods are supposed to learn their techniques with. One small edge the pure side of the room does not get to keep for itself, and then it stops being slow. An alarm rips through the terminal all at once. Guards start shoving bystanders back and shouting about an emergency. Somebody spots what is unmistakably a real gun, and over the comms, Gwang-ik, call sign Beta 3, is asked to confirm whether there is really only one target. There is not. The whole thing was a trap. A masked, armed attacker corners the target woman before Gwang-ik and his teammates can move, and then the reveal drops the floor out of the whole operation because the attackers are not the lone shapeshifter the team came to grab. They are invaders, a type called psychers, and there are 7 of them, and the terminal detonates into gunfire and close combat with civilians scattering in every direction. Lee Jihai, unable to get a clear read on any of it, throws herself into the fight personally and orders Gwang-ik into close combat with one blunt restriction: he is allowed to fight but forbidden to kill. Watching the pattern from the command feed, Miho works out what is actually happening, that the invaders peeling off are not circling back to attack, which means they are deliberately splitting the team apart, carving room to move while everyone is scattered, and that the real objective is something the enemy keeps calling the fake transformers. Kinam gets ordered to fall back and hold for reinforcements and protests that he can still fight, and gets shut down cold. This is an order, not a request. Over near the parking structure, it goes wrong for Real Guard. The operative Kang gets ambushed, slashed open and shot, an invader sneering the words "dirty mixed blood" down at him as he leaves the big man bleeding out on the concrete. One more casualty of a hatred that runs through this whole world. And Gwang-ik, cut off from everyone, still in his flimsy little disguise, comes face to face with a bald, mountainous invader who calls himself an enforced strength metahuman. The thing brags that hundreds more of its kind are already on the way, laughs in his face that immortals do not die, and promises to crush his skull like fruit. Gwang-ik glances around, clocks that there is no one nearby left to protect and that reinforcements are roughly 10 minutes out, and decides, perfectly calm, that 10 minutes is more than enough time to deal with one loud monster on his own. When the smoke finally clears at the airport, the officers piece together what actually happened, and it is worse than a failed capture. There were never any real fake transformers to secure. The whole ambush was a stall, an elaborate way to buy time so that one specific person could slip out a back exit. And standing in that exit, blocking it alone, is a huge red-skinned fugitive, all slabs of muscle, who strolls up mocking the entire team and asks, "Are you ready?" before he attacks. Gwang-ik takes him one-on-one. The man is a nightmare to fight, bragging that immortals do not die while he pulls a fresh arm back into its socket mid-swing, regenerating faster than he has any right to. But Gwang-ik has been building an answer to exactly this. He meets the taunt with a single blue energy-charged punch, and then instead of trying to outmuscle the thing, he uses his signature technique, wreathing himself in blue battle light and redirecting the fugitive's own force so every attack slides off him at an angle, reading the fight now instead of just weathering it. With backup only minutes out, Gwang-ik notices something wrong, a briefcase sitting on the ground in a spot where no briefcase should be, and he crouches down next to it and works out what it really is. A shapeshifter in disguise because a shapeshifter can imitate steel down to the shine but can never actually become fireproof. So he threatens it with fire, and the briefcase promptly gives up the act, unfolds back into a person and surrenders, and then unbelievably starts haggling over borrowing some clothes. His teammates arrive to find both threats already handled, and Gwang-ik, true to form, waves the whole thing off as dumb luck, while a colleague needles him about not getting carried away by the excitement like he apparently did last time. And then the reveal lands on the whole team at once. The red-skinned fugitive is Na Duple, alias Rhinoceros, a third-degree wanted criminal with a real bounty on his head, and they cannot process it that a brand new hire with no proper gear just dropped a dangerous, wanted man in a single hit. The panel holds on Gwang-ik's face while the same stunned punchline settles over everyone. The person who did all of this is just the new employee, Gwang-ik. The debrief connects the dots that matter. The criminal Gwang-ik caught is tied to a terrorist organization called Prometheus, and they had stolen a top-tier secret out of the psionic sector. And here the story pauses to tell you exactly what Prometheus is, because it is going to define everything from here on. They are a group of scientists with one specific seductive dream. They want to give every single human being a special power, not a chosen few, all of humanity, and they have named themselves after the myth on purpose, casting themselves as the Prometheus who stole fire from the gods and handed it down to mankind. That framing, a terrorist cell that genuinely believes it is liberating the human race, is worth holding onto, because a villain who thinks he is the hero is a very different kind of dangerous. For now, the executive Mr. Nam calls Gwang-ik into his office to reward him personally for bagging a terrorist, and is thoroughly amused when the kid asks for cash instead of a promotion. Gwang-ik takes the money and spends part of it treating his mother, a small warm beat in the middle of all the violence, a quiet reminder of who he is actually doing this for. Then the story time skips. Over the 3 months after the airport, Gwang-ik's team catches 5 special species criminals and handles more than 10-dimensional jate closings, and he keeps quietly growing the whole way. He notices things about his team manager along the road, that Junbong is lazy on actual missions, that he hates honest paperwork, that he rarely bothers to spar for more than 10 minutes in their daily duels. Curious just how much he has closed the gap, Gwang-ik challenges the manager to one more duel, a real one this time, no holding back and no consideration for rank. And in the training center he wins decisively and breaks the man's arm again, a result Junbong notes has only ever happened to him one other time in his entire life. Bruised and satisfied, Gwang-ik notices how different it feels to finally be taken seriously, while across from him the manager goes quiet and starts privately rethinking exactly what he wants to do with this kid. All of which sets up the moment this entire story has been circling since its very first frame. On paper, Gwang-ik is a nobody. His official capability file reads Immortal Capability B, Close Combat D, Sensitivity E, Overall D, the kind of forgettable numbers that get a person quietly shown the door, and there is a red mark next to his name that everyone assumes means he is flagged for firing. It is later clarified to mean the opposite, that someone with real pull wants to keep him, if he can prove it on the coming assessment. So Hwarim calls a mandatory company-wide capability test and packs every employee into the underground training hall, co-workers openly ribbing Gwang-ik as the #1 candidate for unemployment. Even the executive Mr. Nam shows up to watch personally, calling it a duel between the company's 2 most popular rookies, and he pairs Gwang-ik against his friend Kinnam. And Gwang-ik stops pretending. In the reflex test, cards flicking at him too fast for normal eye to track, he slips every single one faster than the S-rank benchmark, and the evaluators watching the monitors go dead silent. Endurance, stamina, reaction speed, flexibility, gravity resistance, every result comes back so far above what his file allows that the staff just keep muttering no way at their screens, refreshing the numbers like the machine must be broken. Somewhere in the middle of it he makes the decision he has spent his whole life avoiding, admitting to himself that it was pure arrogance to think he could out-immortal the immortals while holding half of himself back. And he resolves to go all out, even against a friend. And when his assessment is finalized, it does not come back as a B or a D or anything that fits on the normal scale at all. It comes back with a classification so rare it freezes the room. NS non-standard. The exact word the bloodied young man in the very first scene of this whole story was about to explain to the terrified woman with the pink hair, right before we cut away. Now you know what it means. He is not graded against the standards because he does not fit inside them, and he never did. And the instant that grade posts to the system, it catches the eye of a new figure watching from somewhere in the shadows, a man who murmurs, almost fondly, that he is sure the kid already knows exactly what that classification is going to cost him. Once his training period ends, Gwang-ik is promoted to a rank 3 employee, which comes with deeper access to the company's internal files, a raise, and a move into company housing just 5 minutes from the office. Around the same time, a new face introduces himself, a man named Kim Dongcheol who mentions an open spot on a project he would love Gwang-ik to fill and offers to buy him meat, and who later reports back to an unnamed executive director that the meeting went well and the kid is bright and outstanding. Somebody on the outside is quietly scouting him, filing him away for later. But the file access is what lands him in the biggest job of his life so far. Team manager Jungbong gathers Team 3 off-site and briefs them on a newly discovered material out of the white hole, the Axon Stone. It is a crystal that stores and then releases aura, the raw power of an ability user, graded from D all the way up to AA, with the output nearly doubling at every single step, so that one top-grade stone can match the sheer force it takes to bring down an S-rank threat. The organization called Psionic found them first and tried to hoard them all. An internal leak forced them to call in the old force for security, and now, as partial payment for that help, some of those stones are quietly changing hands. At least 50 S-rank caliber stones are known to exist, every one of them kept secret from the public. And Security Team 3 has just been folded into the official operation to move them. Officially, Jungbong walks openly alongside the transport as legitimate support, a friendly face lending muscle to the escort. Unofficially, the plan is a great deal dirtier. Kim Jeong-ah and another teammate are to stage a small believable incident as a distraction, and in the confusion Gwang-ik will simply walk a few boxes of Axon stones out a side door. The whole thing coordinated through signal devices. So the team crosses into the other side, the world beyond the Jates, and while they wait on the shipment's predicted route, Gwang-ik and Jeong-ah hole up in a small cave to rest. And it is there, at a low campfire a day into the otherworld, that she tells him something that reframes her completely. She is not an immortal at all. When he asks her why an ordinary human would do a job this deadly, he jokes that his own reason is world peace, and she answers him with a single flat word: revenge. Two people aimed at the exact same target from opposite ends of the earth, and he files that away too. The heist refuses to stay quiet. First, two armed strangers creep up on their camp and hold them at gunpoint, and the two rookies put them down in a short, brutal clash of blue energy, only to discover from the captured gear, a rifle, walkie-talkies, sniper equipment, that these are independent mercenaries, scavengers chasing the same Axon stones purely for money. They are not the only ones out here, which means the whole calculation just got riskier, and they scrap the clean stealth plan for change of approach. And then at the convoy itself, the plan collapses into open war because Prometheus shows up in person. A bald, powerful higher-up strolls into the standoff, greets them as cockroaches and mutated bastards, and offers the team a choice with a smile: hand over the stones and leave, and he only kills half of them. Refuse and he kills them all. And it is immediately, obviously old business between him and Jungbong. He calls him Little Jungbong, drags up a promise made a long time ago to take his head, the kind of grudge that has been waiting years for a reunion. Someone shouts enough and the standoff explodes into combat. Gwang-ik briefly weighs just grabbing the stones and running, and throws the idea straight out, because running gets most of his team killed. So he stays and he fights. Prometheus has saved a monster for exactly this. A hulking, red, werewolf-like thing crashes into the middle of the battle, calling the woman traveling with them the main course and Gwang-ik the dessert, and knocks him flat on the first pass. Reading its crooked teeth and its patchwork, wrong-looking body, his teammates recognize what it actually is, and it is horrifying. It is a mixed-blood shapeshifter grown in a Prometheus laboratory, a manufactured Irregular, a deliberate attempt to build exactly what Gwang-ik naturally is, except this one came out feral, stripped of every scrap of reason, running on nothing but hunger. It is a mirror of the monster he could so easily have been. The thing has an ability it calls shape, hardening its whole body into stone-like red crystal armor to shrug his hits off entirely, and Gwang-ik falls back on everything his two tutors ever beat into him. He uses the trace hiding technique, hiding traces, to slip clean past its guard, cracks the armored chest open with patient, relentless blows, and then locks into senses concentration, reading its next move straight off its eyes and its posture before it even commits, and he finishes it with one decisive strike of blue energy. Hooded Prometheus reinforcements rush in behind it with a suicide bomb spell, and the team throws itself clear of the blast, and against every expectation they survive. Prometheus is forced to pull back, but Gwang-ik walks off that battlefield carrying a very bad thought. He and his partner only lived because they happened to be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time, and the more he turns it over, the more certain he becomes that this was no accident. The ambush was arranged, and arranged specifically to fail against them, which means someone on the inside, an impostor buried deep inside the Immortal Special Forces, set the entire thing up. He cannot breathe a word of this within his own team, so that night he calls his father for advice about an enemy no one is allowed to touch. And his father hands him a single crooked piece of wisdom that quietly decides everything that follows. If you cannot hit the head, hit the shin. Do not go at the mole directly. Go after whatever it is the mole is standing on. The shin, it turns out, has a name. Money and Save, the second largest private lender in the country, is secretly built and bankrolled by Prometheus, which makes it completely untouchable through any normal prosecution. So Junbong's plan is exactly as insane as it sounds. If they cannot legally arrest a Prometheus-funded bank, they will rob it. And while they are still drawing up the plan, they discover that someone has already beaten them to it. An unknown impostor has hit 2 of the 3 Money and Save branches, cracking each vault in about 5 minutes by threading the blind spots between the cameras, and then instead of pocketing a single one, burning the stolen cash in a heap and vanishing on a motorcycle with an accomplice. It is not about money for this person. It is about hurting Prometheus. Team 3 pulls off their own robbery of the remaining branch cleanly, leadership quietly signing off on it as retaliation owed to the Immortals' circle. And for the first time in the whole story, over the celebration dinner afterward, Gwang-ik admits to himself that he finally feels like he belongs to this team. Then it all caves in at once. The very next morning, the higher-ups launch a sudden internal corruption purge that sweeps up the team manager and every single one of his teammates, and Gwang-ik is left standing completely alone on a rooftop, blaming himself, because his scheme to smoke out the mole is exactly what dragged them all into it. Junbong gets hauled into interrogation and pressured to sign a false confession to inflated charges, told flatly he is looking at a decade in prison at least unless he plays along, with a trial set for 2 days out. And that is when the CEO, Nam Myungjin, summons Gwang-ik in person and admits he has been watching him for a long while now. He lays down an ultimatum with no room in it. In 40 hours, Gwang-ik will rob Money and Save's main branch, the heavily guarded one, entirely alone with 0 team support of any kind, and he will bring back the mysterious impostor. Do that and every one of his teammates walks free. Overheard by his aide afterward, the CEO is asked point-blank whether this kid is a hidden son of his, and he does not really bother to deny it. And he explains that Gwang-ik's true value is not his strength at all. It is that he reads people and situations better than anyone in the building. Gwang-ik does not have to go hunting for the impostor because the impostor comes to him. A blonde woman he already owes a debt to from the airport incident calls him up to a rooftop and calmly reveals that she is the one who robbed the first 2 branches, and now, with the CEO's official blessing, she proposes the 2 of them hit the main branch together. They round out the crew with a 3rd specialist, a professional criminal blackmailed into the job on the understanding that dead men tell no tales, and then they go scout the target, and the target is a fortress. The main branch's security has been maxed out into what is functionally Prometheus's entire private army, wall to wall, and the plan the team lands on in the briefing is summed up in 4 grim words. War and melting, citywide chaos as cover, plus a fire ability to melt straight through the vault's back wall with an anonymous metahuman ally who will only surface at the exact moment he is needed. The heist is brutal from the first second. The blonde downs a combat cocktail nicknamed Popcorn that spikes her strength and her temper both. The wanted criminal Rhinoceros tracks Gwang-ik through a sniper scope and narrates his growing reputation while calling out numbered checkpoints and timing windows over the radio. And the chapter is literally titled Chaos, because Prometheus guards are scrambling everywhere and cannot pin down the intruder tearing through them, since Gwang-ik is hiding his own location the whole time. He goes toe-to-toe with the beast guard Tiger and turns the fight the moment he knocks the thing's helmet clean off, the guards realizing with dawning horror, how can an immortal before the sentence even finishes? He shrugs off a sniper's promise to destroy his head and keeps moving. And then it gets complicated, because a separate armed group speaking Basque shows up impersonating police, telling everyone the operation is on their turf and to stay out of it. When Gwang-ik refuses, they open fire on him and one of them launches a rifle grenade that scores a direct, devastating hit. He goes down hard, buried in rubble, badly hurt, with the clock still ticking and his team with no idea whether he is coming back in time. And he gets up. He lies there in the crater for a second, groaning, grumbling that the team manager is buying him a barbecue dinner for this. And then he drags himself upright, picks up a katana, and finds himself facing Prometheus's elite fighters. One of them is a green-haired man who moments before the explosion secretly swallowed a black market pill called SS4 that numbs his pain, triples his strength, and hands him regeneration on top of it. Gwang-ik blindsides him anyway, glowing with blue battle light, mocks him as a perverted greenhead, and warns him that an immortal really ought to know better than to raise his voice around another immortal. When a second scarred elite steps forward and demands to know why he is just standing there, Gwang-ik, dripping blood, katana in hand, simply asks who's next. He cuts through both of them, breaks clean out of an immortal hunting restraint they try to lock onto him, and in the wreckage the crew finds a personal safe made of other-side metal holding a mysterious scroll, one more loose thread the story is saving for later. His old classmate Kinnam, desperate to prove himself worthy of his famous bloodline, comes to investigate the robbery and runs straight into the masked culprit, who is of course Gwang-ik, and gets thoroughly one-sidedly outclassed. Gwang-ik knocks him out cold, lets his other pursuer slip away, and quietly vanishes, disguising himself as a delivery driver to hide out with 12 hours left on the clock. And then he walks straight into the last place on Earth anyone would expect him. A disciplinary trial has been convened over the money and save attacks, presided over by a director named Ma Yun, a man so powerful that even the CEO reportedly cannot rein him in, while a restrained man loudly protests that the whole proceeding is unjust. The committee needs the one witness who can confirm whether Team 3 is responsible for the robberies, and that witness is Rank 2 employee Yu Gwang-ik, who strolls in late to the open scorn of the entire room because he overslept. And then he detonates the whole proceeding. He confesses, perfectly calm, that he robbed the money and saved main branch alone. And director Ma Yun leans forward, eyes narrowing, and coldly tells him to go ahead and show them the amusing little thing he has been hiding. The amusing little thing Gwang-ik has been hiding is a single photograph, and it is a bomb with the pin already pulled. He tells the room flatly that he was the one who robbed the man's location the day before, and then he shows them what he took from that safe. It is a document belonging to something called the Immortal Faith, an organization of immortal supremacists who believe that only immortal blood deserves to exist at all, and their commandments carry one crucial weakness. They must be signed by their high apostle in a special ink they call holy water, an ink that can only be produced from immortal blood. Which means there is exactly one name on that page, written in a substance that only one very specific person on Earth could have made. As the committee moves to read that name aloud, a suited executive suddenly cuts in and insists on verifying it himself, and then without warning he grabs a knife and the whole hearing erupts into violence. The fight tears through the building, the disciplinary chamber coming apart around them. The disguised attacker breaks for window to escape, and Gwang-ik unleashes his signature blue energy and blasts him clean out of the air before he can reach it. And as he goes down, the camera pushes in on the name signed in holy water on the cult's commandments. Ma Yun, the company's own director Ma Yun, the untouchable man presiding over this very trial, is the high apostle of the immortal faith. Gwang-ik stands over the beaten attacker and rips the illusion off the last of it with a single question: why are you wearing my team manager's face as a mask? Because that is the final piece. The impostor who set up the ambush in the other side, the one who dragged the whole team into the corruption purge, has been walking around this entire time wearing Lee Jungbong's face, and Ma Yun was the hand behind all of it. Gwang-ik, pulling one loose thread of bank robbery, unraveled a cult buried at the very top of his own company. The company predictably buries the truth right back. They announce that director Ma Yun has resigned for health reasons, hand Team 3 2 days off and 48 hours of enforced silence, and just like that, the man at the rotten center of everything is simply gone, and almost no one will ever know that a rank 2 nobody is the one who brought him down. Office life resumes. Coworkers gossip idly about Ma Yun's sudden retirement without the faintest idea what really happened, and Gwang-ik, bored and relieved the whole thing is not being pinned on him, lets himself relax for the first time in weeks. The fallout is quieter, but it plants every seed the story is about to grow. A blonde man Gwang-ik does not recognize keeps cornering him, furious, insisting you are the one who made me like this, threatening to tell everyone if he keeps playing dumb. A running mystery the story is very deliberately saving for later, and who promptly, absurdly, becomes his combative new roommate. More importantly, Kim Jeong-ah invites him over, shuts down any idea that it might be a date with a blunt "you are a great person but not my type," and then walks him into a private back room. Every wall of it is covered in a Prometheus case board, photographs strung together with red thread, months of obsessive work laid bare. She warns him plainly that now that he has exposed this much, any of them, and really all of them, could come after him for it, and she makes him memorize the faces he will need to recognize on sight. And then, alone with him in that room, she says the quiet part out loud: I have to kill Prometheus. And Gwang-ik answers her without hesitating. Okay, we will kill them. She privately reflects that this hidden room and letting him into it is the single most vulnerable thing about her, and the whole world starts closing in around him. The Jade emergencies keep coming and the team starts noticing a disturbing pattern, a double Jade, two holes tearing open where there should only ever be one. A rare and unpredictable phenomenon that has now happened 8 separate times across South Korea. Someone at one of the scenes finally voices the fear no one wants to say, that a pattern like this, repeating, escalating, is exactly the kind of thing that comes right before a true named. At the same time, the recruitment offers start flooding in from every direction. The Psionic Association, a hunting corporation, rival organizations dangling better pay and better treatment. Everyone suddenly desperate to land the mixed-blood nobody. And that terrifies Gwang-ik more than any monster, because it means outside parties are starting to piece together what he really did to director Ma Yoon. During one Jate response down at Dongdaemun Station, the rival recruiters actually start bickering over him in the middle of an active battle, pushing their organizations on him while slimes pour out of the hole. Until a hooded figure storms in and shuts every one of them down. It is Lee Jungbong, the real one this time, now standing with the Immortal Special Force, warning each of them in turn to keep their hands off his dog. The team manager who spent Gwang-ik's first day trying to make him quit has decided in his own harsh way that this kid is his. And that double Jate at Dongdaemun is not finished opening. The hole at Dongdaemun Station tears open into the largest double door anyone has ever recorded, red slime monsters pouring out by the hundreds, the team manager barking at his people to break all the thieves' legs as they wade in. And then a phenomenon this size does exactly what everyone in the field has been dreading. It announces a new named. A massive figure wrapped in blue energy erupts out of the Jate, the radios scream new named appearance and the order comes down the line to retreat. But Gwang-ik does not move because the air on this battlefield has done something to him, reached into his chest and closed a fist. This air, he thinks, it is the same as 10 years ago. And the page answers him with a splash of a horned red monster looming over tiny silhouetted figures a decade back, the past bleeding straight into the present, and the story finally shows you the wound sitting underneath every single thing he has done. 10 years old? Buried in rubble, surrounded by the carnage of a monster he never even saw coming, a small boy lies bloodied and dizzy and terrified, begging into the dust. Save me! I don't want to die. Calling for his mom, calling for his dad, and no one is coming because everyone who could come is already dead or running. That is the child who watched a single hero stand alone against an impossible tide and win, and who decided, right there under all that concrete, that he would spend his whole life making sure the next kid pinned in the rubble gets pulled out. Everything grew out of that one terrified boy. The barefoot runs across the knives, the strangling collar, the duels, the apology letters, the classification no one else on Earth fits inside. All of it traces back to a 10-year-old who promised himself he would never be that helpless again. And now the grown version of him is standing in the open, face to face with the exact kind of monster that put him in the rubble in the first place. So he fights the way he swore he would fight. A tentacle from the named lashes out and injects him with a mind-altering toxin as he throws himself in front of an association employee to take the hit, the world smearing sideways, and he keeps going anyway. The thing is a corrosive slime named, a huge clawed arm of liquid surging toward the team while everyone screams to get clear, and support teams answer with telekinesis and fire, stripping its barrier and burning its tentacles while dodging beams that fire from its eyes. An armored ally throws himself into an aerial blade strike on the way down. As the battle turns ugly, some of the fighters start arguing to fall back and leave the overrun front line behind, and Gwang-ik pushes the other way, straight toward the people about to be abandoned. His body is coming apart at the seams, and a teammate actually has to grab him and remind him, "Immortal, wait for your regeneration to finish before you go back in." The named multiplies into what looks like dozens of copies of the team manager, and the whole line nearly breaks in panic until the reveal lands that those were fake presences all along. Jungbong seeding illusions of himself across the entire battlefield to bait the monster's attacks while he strikes from hiding. And through every second of it, Gwang-ik just keeps running, refusing to stop, scooping up every downed person he can reach, teammate and stranger alike, and carrying them out of the fire on a body that should have quit an hour ago. The barrier finally cracks under the focused fire, glowing and fracturing, and the team manager's real strike lands exactly where it broke, "Right here, you bastard," and the named is driven back. The manager finally calls it, "Stop, it's over." Blood-soaked and swaying on his feet, Gwang-ik asks the only question that has ever mattered to him: did we win? And here is the honest answer, the one that makes this whole world feel real instead of cheap. Humanity has never once managed to kill a named, and this time is no exception. The monster is not slain. It simply retreats back into the hole as the Jade seal, one rare ability holding the very last door open just long enough to force it out. They did not kill it, but Gwang-ik thinks, looking at the people still breathing around him, we did not lose either. A man he dragged out of the wreckage breaks down thanking him, desperate to know the name of the person who saved his life before his daughter is even born. And then a single quiet line of text closes the battle. June 11th. A new named appeared in Seoul, South Korea. No one died that day. For the first time in the history of these things, because one non-standard kid refused to retreat, not a single person died. Which brings us all the way back around to exactly where this video began. That night, still coming down off the battle, still aching in a body that has not finished knitting itself back together, Gwang-ik is approached by cloaked strangers, and one of them tests him with a sudden killing strike out of nowhere. And this is the moment every scar and every drill finally pays for itself, because his precognition flashes a vision of his own body being torn clean apart, and he steps back half a second before the real blow lands, exactly the way he learned to in a training room a lifetime ago. The man introduces himself as Stephen Choi, and he makes Gwang-ik an offer: a high position inside Prometheus, unlimited money, women, a penthouse, anything he could ever want handed to him on a plate. No more grinding, no more apology letters, no more bleeding out on the floor of a train station for strangers who will never know his name. Everything the world keeps insisting a person like him is supposed to want, and Gwang-ik turns it down flat. Stephen Choi tells him coldly that he's going to regret this and leaves, and Gwang-ik does not so much as blink. Sit with what that refusal actually means, because it is the entire point of him. Gwang-ik is the one single person in this story who was born able to take the easy road, every easy road. Two kinds of power in one body: a father's government connections, a mother's company ties, and now a terrorist organization with unlimited resources offering him a throne, and he has said no to every last one of them. He chose the knives and the collar and the most dangerous door in the whole building, because the only thing he has ever genuinely wanted is to be strong enough to matter and to decide for himself who he becomes. When he gets back to his team and tells them Prometheus came for him personally, they are shaken, because it means Prometheus is quietly recruiting talented people everywhere, in every organization all at once. And there are still threads left hanging in the dark: a mystery man in an old photograph pinned to a Sunbee's wall, a teammate's strange rescue that sounds like a kidnapping, an organization that now has this non-standard kid circled in red on its list. And that is exactly where Season 1 of Genius of the Unique Lineage draws its line in the sand. The hybrid who was never supposed to exist has made himself into someone the most dangerous people alive are genuinely afraid of, and he did it without taking a single shortcut, without becoming the feral thing in the Prometheus lab, without selling a single piece of himself. And that is the complete first season. If you made it all the way here with me, you already know this story is worth it, so do me a quick favor and hit that like button and subscribe, because Season 2 picks up right where this left off, with Prometheus finished asking nicely, and I will be covering every bit of it right here on this channel. Genius of the Unique Lineage, also released as the perfect hybrid, is based on the original story by Solpung, with webtoon art by KQ Dadak and Clover. Go support the official release. I'll see you in the next one.